Watch me convert the default combo box in my Power Apps form and turn it into this modern pop-up component that allows for multiple selections. If you want to add this to the forms in your own apps, you can follow along and I'll break down each and every step on how you can achieve this. It'll add a modern design to your forms, all the selections will be visible directly on your form, and because we're building the pop-up as a component, you'll be able to reuse it to accommodate as many combo boxes as you need. So let's go. So first, I'll start off by sharing the data source for our app, which is a SharePoint list, and it's called tasks. So this is the data source that we're going to add to our Power App and manipulate the form once we get it all in there. But basically, we have an ID column, we have a title column, there's a start date and a due date, but these aren't really relevant. What we're going to focus on today is manipulating the tags and category columns, and these are multi-select columns that we want to make into a bit more modern experience. But if we look at the tags column and then we click the settings and then edit, you'll see that we have 6 choices in here. And if we look under more options, there's the allow multiple selections set to yes. And for the category column, again, we have 5 choices in this one. And under more options, we do enable allow multiple selections. So these are the 2 columns that we're going to be focusing on, and we're going to manipulate them inside our Power Apps form. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump over to Power Apps and get started. So this is my Power App. I have a task gallery here that I've created. I'm not going to go into how I built it. That's for a future video, but yours might look something different. Important thing is it's a gallery, and each item in my gallery has an invisible button over top of it with an onSelect property. So that's what I'm going to get into, is explain what we're doing on the onSelect, and then we'll build from there. So I have the onSelect property here. What we're doing first is setting all the details of the task from the SharePoint list and storing it inside of a variable, and I'm calling it var task. And after that, we're going to do something with a clear collect. So we're going to clear the collection, create the collection every time that we click on this button. And it's going to be called call multi-select. And we're going to throw in each of our choice columns in here and put them in a loop in a for all statement. And we're going to create a record for each value that's selected in that task. So for the tags, we're storing the title and hard coding it as a tags and storing the value inside of a value column. And again, we're doing the same thing for the category. We're going to title it category and with a value column to store its value. And if you have more choice columns, you can continue this on and create more for all statements to capture all of the data of that task. After we do this, we're going to navigate to our task form, which I've created. I've called task form. We're doing a fate transition, but you can do whatever you like. And then it's going to move us over to that task form screen. So that's the setup for our onSelect property. This is essential in order for this to all work. So what I'm going to do now is just click the play button, and I'm going to hover and click on one of these items to activate the onSelect code so that we can continue on. And you can see it navigated me over to our task form screen. So we'll build out the form here. And before we continue, it might be useful to check the collection and the data that's actually stored in it now that we've engaged on the onSelect property. So if you click on the variables section here and under collections, this is where you can see any collections in your app. If we hit the 3 dots, view table, so you'll see what happened here. There's the tags, there's 3 of them, and these are the values. And there's 5 categories here with all of their values. And that's for that specific task that we selected. And you can just check that right here. It's this task. And you can see there's 3 for tags and 5 for the category. Now we can go back into our app and let's build out the form. I'm going to hit the insert, and I'm not going to use the modern version of the form yet because it's still in preview. I'm going to go over to the classic and the edit form, and I'm going to just move it over to the center here, maybe make it a little bit narrower. And let's go ahead and update the data source, which is going to be tasks. This is my SharePoint list. It's going to be under the data. I've already added it as a data source, so just make sure that you reference your SharePoint list, whatever it's called. So yeah, we'll go back here and we're going to edit the fields that we want to display on our form. I'm going to go ahead and just add the title, maybe just the start date, the due date, And the ones we really care about are the multi-select columns, which is tags, and the category columns. So I'm going to go ahead and add those. And I'm going to also change it to a 2-column layout. And I'm going to drag over the title, start date, due date, tags, and category. That all looks good to me. The other thing that we're going to do for this form is go to the Advanced tab and make sure to update the items property to our variable that we stored our task in. So that's called var task. And there you go. You can see it populated the data that's in that task. The other thing we're going to update is the onSuccess property, and we're going to make this just go back to the previous page. So now we're ready to start manipulating our data cards, which is both the tags and the category one. So we'll start with the tags and eventually move over to the category. First things first, you're going to want to unlock the change properties. And what we're going to do actually is just delete this dropdown altogether. So we're going to just hit that delete. We're going to be brave. We're going to see some errors, but don't worry, we're going to fix those in a few minutes here. First thing we're going to do is insert a new gallery. So this is going to display the selections on the form. So I'm going to go ahead and search up gallery, and we're going to do a blank vertical gallery. And you'll see it puts it outside of our data card. So what we're going to want to do is just right click and cut, go into our data card and right click and paste. So now it's going to live inside of our data card. The items property, we're going to change it to filter multi-select title equals tags. So this is again going to filter our collection here. And if you remember, view table, we're basically filtering this collection or this table to where it's only going to give us the title where the tag is. We're also going to update the template size. We're going to just change this to 30. And then after we do that, we're going to update the height property with this code. And what this formula is doing is just updating our height value for our gallery, and it's going to be dynamic. So based on the number of items that there are, it's going to adjust accordingly. It's going to have 2 items per row. So that's why we have to do this fancy roundup times self, template height, template padding, all of these things to account for all of the values. If you want to have 3 items per row, you would just change this to a 3. If you want to have 4, you change it to a 4. But I find that 2 is good enough. It's usually going to capture as much data as we need. So that's what I went with here. In the width property, we're going to change to parent.width minus 60. So that's just going to put it right in between there. The other pieces that we want to change are the X property to 30 and the Y property I'm going to change to 46. I also want the wrap count to be 2 for my gallery. I'm going to leave the template padding as 5. And one other thing I'm going to do is look for delay item loading. And I want to set this to false so that it doesn't do that spinny animation when you load them in. So now within the gallery, I'm going to go ahead and click the edit, and I'm going to insert a button. I'm going to use a classic button for this just because it has a bit more customization properties at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and insert that. Make sure your X and Y properties are at 0. The size for width, I'm just going to go ahead and say parent.template width. And the height, I'm going to say parent.template height. I'm also going to change the display mode to disabled because I don't want the users to actually be able to click on it or hover and change colors and all of that. So I'm going to go change it to disabled. And as a result, I'm going to have to change some of the color properties as well. So under the disabled color, I'm going to go ahead and just change it to black. And for the disabled fill, I'm going to just change it to color fade medium purple 80%. I'm also going to change the font size to 10. I'm going to also remove the border. And then lastly, I'm just going to update the text property to this item.value. So that's going to actually display the value of our selections. And you can play around with the border radius. I'm just going to make it 5, but you can choose whatever you like. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and fix the errors. So I'm actually going to, before I do that, I'm going to change the name of our gallery. Let's change it to gal tags. There you go. And we're going to click on this error here. It's the Y property for the error message. And right now it doesn't have anything to reference. So we need to reference our gallery because we deleted data card value 13. That was the combo box. So I'm going to change this to our gallery. So gal tags. And there you go. And the other error is just going to be on the update property of our data card. So this is the data that it's actually sending back to SharePoint once we submit the item. Again, that data card value that we deleted is no longer there. So we're going to have to just delete this. And we're going to point to our collection and the selected values that we have in there. So we are going to have to use a filter function to our collection where the title equals tags dot value. So you'll see here, if we preview what that is, it's just giving us the collection and the selected values. It's basically all of these 3 items here. So next we're going to build out a button that's going to actually allow us to enable the pop-up that we're going to build after this. So we're going to go ahead and insert a button. For this one, I'll use the modern button because I don't really need to do too much customization. They have a good outline feature in the button. So I'm going to use the modern one for this one. I'm going to go ahead and just call it edit. I'll make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to change one of its properties here. So the type, I'm going to make it secondary. So it has a bit of just a gray outline and it's not too prominent on the form. If you want to make it dynamic, the position, I can just make it just at the end there. So I'm going to make it parent.width minus self.width minus 30. So that's always going to place it near the end here with the proper space in between each of the data cards. The Y property, I'm just going to set it to 10 if we want to be consistent with the other alignments of the tags. Now the most important part is the onSelect property. So we're going to just go to the onSelect and we're going to paste in a code and I'll go through what each of these things does. So first we're defining a tags value. So with tags equaling that filter where the title equals tags. So we're just defining it here. So it makes it easier for us to reference just this tags word instead of writing out the formula many times. And then we get into our formula. So if it's empty, so if the tags here that we've defined is empty, then I want the multi-select items to be still the choices that we have available to us from the SharePoint list, but the selections are all blank and the selection type is going to be titled tags, but it is going to have a blank value, and the multi-select visible is equal to true. So that's going to activate the pop-up component once we build it. Now, if it's not blank and it actually has values, like in our scenario, it's going to update the multi-select items to all of the choices of our task form. And we're going to update this variable multi-select selected as the tags, which is just going to be this up here. And we're going to also update the multi-select selected type to tags and value, again with the tags values. And we're going to set a multi-select visible to true. So it's a mouthful, but this is the setup that you need in order to make this work. And that's basically it on the setup for the data card. I'm going to go ahead and click the play button, the preview button, and I'm going to click the edit button right now. It's not going to do anything, but it is doing and activating some of those variables that we defined. So I just wanted them to be defined, and it's going to make the build of the component much easier. So let's go over to our components tab in the tree view, and we're going to click new component, and let's title this multi-select pop-up. An important thing to keep in mind is to update the access app scope and make sure it's turned on. This is important in order for you to be able to reference the values of the variables that you define in your app and that you define within your component. The width, I'm going to update to app.width. And the height, I'm also going to update to app.height. And the fill property, I'm just going to update and change to 0.3. And so next we're going to insert a container, and it's going to be a vertical container. We're going to update the gap to 20. And we're going to update the X property. In order to center it, I'm going to go parent.width minus self.width divided by 2. So that's going to center it within our app. And we're going to do something similar for the height, except this time we're going to say parent.height minus self.height, all divided by 2. And that's going to put it in the center. And for the width, you can play around with the values here, but I'm just going to go minimum, and it's going to be app.width times 90%, or 400 pixels. And for height, I'm going to change it to the minimum of app.height times 70%, or 350. It's not going to matter too much on a non-responsive form, but if it is responsive, this is a decent formula that you can use to make it more dynamic. And so for the rest of it, I'm just going to update the color. I'll just make it white, and I'm going to set the border radius to 10, and drop shadow, I'll make it semi-bold. And so next up, we're going to insert within this container, we're going to do another container, but this time it's going to be a horizontal one. And this is going to be for our header. So it's going to have the title, and it'll have an icon, like a cancel icon, so we can close the pop-up. We're going to justify horizontal to the end, and we're going to keep the vertical line at the top, and we're going to set the minimum width to 0. We're going to turn off flexible height, and we're going to make that 30. We're going to border radius to 0, drop shadow none. And so within this container, we're going to insert a text label. And again, I'm just going to use the classic one because it is still in preview for the modern controls. So text label, I'm going to set it to multi-select type dot title, and that's going to be tags, but it will be dynamic. For other ones, we're going to define different titles there. So it's going to be tags. We're going to set the font size to 14. The font, I'm going to set it to Lato Black. And I'm going to add some padding to the left. So padding left will be 15. Height will be stretch. Minimum height will be 0. Flexible width will be yes. And minimum width will be 0. And then we're going to insert a button, and it's going to be the cancel button. And I'm going to set the height to stretch. Minimum height will be 0, and width will be 60. And you can see that it's kind of too far out at the top. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to update the main container's padding to 20. So we're going to do 20 all around. There you go. So now that's more centered. And so next what we want to do is update what our selections are up here, which we're going to use a gallery for that. We're going to go back to our previous screen here. We're going to select our gallery, gal tags, and we're just going to copy, and we're going to go back into the components, and under container 1, we're going to paste this right in. So we don't have to rebuild it each time. And so you'll notice the items property is hard-coded with the tags. What we want to do is actually update that to be more dynamic. And this is going to be one of the variables that we defined earlier, and it's multi-select type dot title. So this is going to be dynamic depending on which data card that you select. In this gallery, we're also going to update its visible property. And it's only going to be visible when self.allItemsCount is greater than 0. I'm going to set minimum width to 0. Flexible height we're going to turn off. And by default, our height property is going to remain the same. It's going to dynamically update based on the number of selections that we have. And so within the gallery, I'm going to hit that edit button and I want to insert a cancel button. And I'm just going to make the width to be 30. So it's going to be a square. And the X position of it is going to be parent dot template width minus self dot width. And that's going to put it right at the end of the button. And we're going to update the Y property. You can see it shows 0 here, but up here it's actually 30, which is why it's not showing up on all of the items. I don't know why Power Apps does this, but we just have to be aware and make sure that we update it right up here in the formula bar. And so you can see it's almost there, but there's something off still. And that's going to be, let's check the width, let's check the height. There you go. So the height, it says 30, but really it's 64. So make sure to update that to 30 as well. And there you go. I'm also going to add a bit of a padding. I'm just going to do 5 on the top and 5 on the bottom so that it fits nicely and with some padding around it. Now, of course, the key thing here is going to be its onSelect property. So let's go ahead and update that onSelect. And we're going to update it to remove from our collection. So call multi-select. And we're going to look up our collection, and anything that has a value that equals this item dot value will be removed. So that section is done. Now we can go ahead and again, under container 1, we're going to insert another gallery, and it's also going to be a blank vertical gallery. And we're going to update its items property with this code. So we're going to sort by columns of the value in ascending order, but the important thing is here is this filter function. If anything that's already been selected, we're going to filter it out. And so we can't really see the results right now, but we will once we put in some buttons in here to showcase our values. So we're going to make some updates to the gallery first. I'm just going to update the minimum width to 0. Flexible height is on, but we're going to remove the minimum height. Template size, I'm going to change to 30. I'm going to increase the template padding by 3, so it's going to be 8. I'm going to turn off show scroll bar, and I'm also going to delay item loading, set it to false. And then here, I'm going to edit the template here, and I'm going to insert a button. I'm going to use the classic button, and I'm going to make sure its X property is 0, Y property is 0. Width is going to be parent.template width. Height will be parent.template height. The text is going to be this item.value. I'm going to set the border radius to 5. Font size will be 10. I'm going to set it to text align to the left with some padding to the left. I'm going to make it 15. And I'm also going to update its onSelect property to this formula here. And it's again going to check if the value is not in this collection. Otherwise, we're going to collect it into our collection, call multi-select. And we're going to use the title that we're currently filtering for. And we're going to store the value inside the value columns. And you can play around with the design of the colors and all of that. For mine, I'm just going to update the fill property and set it to a color fade of a light gray by 80%. The color here, I'm just going to make black for the font. I'm going to turn off the border. And so now you can actually just quickly test it out. If you hold the Option key, if you're on a Mac, or Alt on a Windows computer, you can sort of click through and see how everything works. It adds and removes things from our collection. One thing as well, for the cancel button here, we do have to set an onSelect property to activate the visible property. So we're going to go set _ multi-select visible to false. And that wraps up our component build. We can now go ahead back to our screens and update our form and all of that to make it all functional. So let's go to the screens. I'm going to go ahead and on our screen, insert under custom, you'll see our multi-select pop-up component. So you can go ahead and click that and it'll wrap around the app size of your screen. So there you go. One thing though we do have to change is its visible property. We just want to set it to underscore multi-select visible. So by default it will be off, but if you hit the preview button here and click the edit button, it's gonna set it up and it'll be visible. If you click the cancel button here, it'll hide it. So you can sort of play around and you can see as we make changes, it gets updated on the form as well. And if we continue to add more, you can see the height of the data card automatically adjusts. Now we also need to add some save and submit buttons on our screen. So I'm just gonna go ahead and insert some modern buttons. Just really quickly, I'll make this save button. And we're gonna set its onSelect property to submit form, and it's form 2. That's the name of our form. And we're also going to create another button. And I'll drag it over here. I'll call this back. And I'm gonna change it to a secondary button, and its onSelect property, I'm just gonna say back. So you can see that already looks so much better if we preview the app. You can see all of the items here, whereas on the category you can't. It just says 5 items. You actually have to click in to be able to see, but even then you can't see them. You even have to scroll through to see all of them. So yeah, definitely much better looking and more user-friendly. And we can make sure that this works. So if we submit, it'll take us back to our previous page. If we click on another one, you can see it does have different values. We can click the edit button, change it, add a few more, and then click the save button. You can see if we go back, it does keep and maintain and update the SharePoint site as well. If we refresh, you'll see there's some changes that are happening. So if you stuck around to this point, thank you so much. I'll give you a bit of a bonus here and show you how you can update other choice columns if you have multiple of them. So I'll just show you the process to make it as efficient as possible so you don't have to do all of the steps that we did for the first choice column here. So yeah, let's get into it. I'll just show you how you can do it for the category in a more efficient way. So if we go back, you'll remember we did define it here. On our invisible onSelect property, we defined it for all and in the category and storing its values. If you have even more, just make sure to add a few more of these, but we've already done so here. So once we click through, we have that item here. So again, we're going to go here and unlock the properties. We're going to delete this choice column, and because we've already done it once, we can leverage what we've created here and just copy this gallery, and we're going to paste it directly into here. We're going to have to update a few of the properties. So the X property is 30, the Y property is going to be 46, and we're going to also update the items property to match our category column. And we're going to rename it. Let's rename the gallery to gal category. And we're then going to be able to make some fixes on the errors that originally popped up here. So let's change the error message Y coordinate to the name of our gallery. So it's gal category. And we're going to also update the update property to filter our collection where title equals, and we're going to hard code this to category dot value. And again, we're going to copy this button here and we can paste it directly into this data card. Make sure to update the Y property to 10. The X property is already defined dynamically to be at the end here of the data card. And we're also going to update the onSelect property. So here it's all about tags. So we're just going to replace all the words that have tags, and you can replace them with category. And that's it. Everything else, the component, you won't have to change. It's already dynamic and it'll behave as normal. So what you can do now is just go ahead and click the edit button. And right now you can see we have all of the options selected, but if we unselect some of them, they'll start to pop up as a selectable option down here. And we can maybe make some changes to this as well. And we can hit the save button. And you can see the data cards are updated. If we refresh, you can see the updates are made in SharePoint. Thanks so much for sticking around, and thank you so much for all the support for the last couple of months. It's been amazing to see this channel grow to heights that I didn't ever expect. So I really appreciate it, and I hope what I'm showing you here is giving you value and inspiring you to make better apps. Let me know if you do make any of these changes to your existing apps and any feedback that you get. I'd love to hear if it is really helping you create better apps for your users. So again, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.